Hello, followers. It was supposed to be just another ordinary day when a mother and daughter decided to visit a house they were thinking of renting. At the location, they met a man who claimed to be the owner of the house. He invited them to see the spring, which was within the boundaries of the property. They accepted the invitation and went with him. However, soon everything turned into a nightmare. But what did he want? That man deep in the woods with two women? Who was he? And most importantly, what did he do to Gabriella Barrios? On May 25, 1991, Gabriella Barrios was brought into the world in the picturesque city of Queltesatenango, a city known for its beautiful, vibrant vegetation and its natural beauty. This city, followers, is a region in Guatemala, and it is located at an altitude of approximately 2,300 meters above sea level. The city, followers, is known as Zela by its natives. It is a place of exuberant beauty, and it was there that our case today took place. Gabriella Barrios was the daughter of two educators, Nero Barrios and Orba Lely Lopes, whom we will refer to here. In today's video, Lely plays an important role in our story. So, being the daughter of educators, education in her life was not something she had to learn, but rather it was something that was in her blood. It simply existed in her life like the air she breathed. Her friends used to call her Gabriella. From a very young age, Gabriella stood out for her unwavering kindness. Her teachers always admired her academic discipline. On Sundays, she used to attend the evangelical church with her family, and she was known by everyone in that cold region of Guatemala because her city was the coldest place in Central America, reaching a maximum of only 14 degrees Celsius. But she had a lot of warmth within her. Gabriella decided to study architecture, graduated as an architect, and opened an office with a friend. But her curiosity went much further, beyond just constructing buildings or drawing up architectural plans. She liked other things too, such as the culinary arts. Food was something that brought her pleasure. Gabriella loved creating dishes. And in addition to that, she wrote poetry. She became a host on a local Christian radio station and composed several songs with her father, for those who knew her. She was a tenacious person, someone who dedicated herself deeply to the things she did. Gabriella Barrios' followers, she did everything she liked to learn. In other words, this was how Gabriella Barrios expressed the colors of her soul. It was in 2014, while she was volunteering at an event for children with cancer, that she met him. Eric Lancero. The two had an immediate connection and got to know each other better until they get together, until they click in a relationship and to make plans for a future together. Yes, folks, but in that part of Gabriella's life, things were improving. There was another part within her family where the situation was demanding control. Greater. Gabriella's father got cancer at that time. And because of that, Gabriella and Lely, her mother, decided that they would have to renovate the house they lived in so her father could have a bit more comfort during his recovery. And to renovate the house, they would have to rent another place to live while their own home was under construction. And that's exactly what Gabriella, together with her mother Lene, decided to do. And it's from this point on, followers, that this story starts to get darker. Gabriella, now 26 years old, took charge of looking for the house they wanted, and it was on February 3rd that she read an ad in the newspaper about a house for rent, just a few kilometers from where they lived. For Gabriella, it was perfect. It wasn't too far, just 13 kilometers away. So, she decided to get in touch with the owner of the house. She spoke with this man on the phone, and they arranged to meet the next day so she could see the house she intended to rent. And here's a tip, followers, especially for the women following me. When you go to see any property you intend to rent or buy, and if the person showing it to you is a man you don't know, don't go alone. Take a trusted male figure with you, because what I'm about to tell you now, even though Gabriella didn't go alone, she went to the meeting with her mother, will make all the difference for what happened next. February 4th arrived. As I already mentioned here, Gabriella went with her mother to see the house. And during this walk, Gabriella was still posting about the places she visited, making videos, taking photos, and sending them to her family at home, and they all admired them. Suddenly, followers, when you least expected, an absolute silence took over that moment. She was no longer making videos, she was no longer taking photos. She had stopped sending the things she recorded to her family. Her family members started to get worried, and the hours kept passing by. And the more time went by, the more panic took over Gabriella Barrios' and Lely's families. And from this point on, followers, everything really starts to get dark. That same night, Lely was almost dead. She was badly hurt, she had been beaten, seriously injured, and even so, she managed to drag herself to a busier area nearby. The people who saw her took her to the hospital, and in that hospital, in the midst of all the anguish she was going through, she said a name. With her face swollen, completely bruised, Lily said, "Emerson Marim." But who is Emerson Marim? Followers, I'm going to talk about him now. From this point on, Emerson Marim was born on April 2nd, 1977. He was a famous soccer player from the city of Quetzaltenango. And followers, he followed in his father's footsteps, who was an important sports figure in the region. With an explosive temperament and highly competitive, he turned into a beast on the field. But the problem is, followers, that off the field he was also a beast. Because he, followers, was the kind of man who collected titles on the field and controversies off it. After his football career ended, Emerson Marim simply decided to step out of the media spotlight. But he remained very active on social media. Even though he was no longer a topic in sports headlines, he would post photos from his glory days, winning trophies, titles, everything on his internet page. His former teammates, his fans, people he knew would leave positive comments on his posts. However, followers, there was something wrong. With this man, something began to come to light after the disappearance of Lely and Gabriella Barrios. It was from that moment on that we would come to know the real Emerson Marinho. Gabriella, followers, was missing. People were worried. Once the mother showed up injured, hurt in a hospital, mentioning Emerson's name, people started searching for Gabriella. Her boyfriend, Eric, decided to go to the location where Lely was found to see if he could have any luck finding her. Gabriella too. The search intensified until everything was clarified and Gabriella was found in the worst possible way. It was on a Sunday, February 5th, 2017, that the body of Gabriella Barrios was found by firefighters near a stream. It was partially submerged in the water. When they examined the girl's body, they noticed injuries to her abdomen and chest, and on her neck. And it was up to Eric Lancero, her boyfriend, to identify her remains. According to Eric, Gabriella's legs were completely injured. Her face was disfigured by a blunt object. After a forensic analysis, it was determined that she suffered a very serious injury to her carotid gland, which caused massive hemorrhaging that resulted in her death. The autopsy also revealed that Gabriella's nose was broken after multiple blows with a blunt object, which showed the violence of that attack. Even at the wake, the young woman's family and friends were crying out for justice. And everyone knew that the person responsible for that scene was Emerson Marim, but they were also afraid. Emerson Marim was a celebrity, and his name could resonate on another level, because the weight of fame, his status, and his past could in fact interfere with the investigation. Despite that, the investigation began, and a commissioner from the National Civil Police of Guatemala made it clear right away that there was already a main suspect for that atrocity that was committed against Gabriela and the attempted murder of her mother. That name, of course, was Emerson Marim. And as we already know, followers, justice may be blind, but it can see in the dark. Naturally, with all this scandal, Emerson had already disappeared, right? But the police were able to successfully recover important images from Gabriela's cell phone. When she was posting her videos and photos online, in one of those particular images, Emerson's face could be seen. And that placed him directly at the crime scene. And it was thanks to these images, followers, and to Lele's testimony, who was slowly recovering from the injuries they suffered, that the police were able to piece together the timeline of this case. On the 4th, the day of the visit, Gabriela and Lele went to see the house they intended to rent. All of this, I'm telling you now, according to the timeline put together by the police. When they arrived at the location, they found Emerson Marim still outside the house. He introduced himself, greeted them, and claimed that they couldn't enter the inside of the house at that moment because there were still tenants on the premises. And because of that, they would have to see the property only from the outside, on the grounds. And that's when he said there was a river spring on the property, which gave the place a special charm. And that's when, followers, they decided to go with Emerson to see this so-called spring. And it was during this walk, and Lelis was making those video and photo posts and sending them to the family's phone. The three of them ventured into a wooded area to see the spring. That's when the whole nightmare began. In an isolated area, alone with the two women, Emerson's behavior changed drastically. He started to become more violent. And suddenly, out of nowhere, he began to repeatedly assault Gabriela with his fists. Lele even tried to protect her daughter, defending her from Emerson's attacks, but she ended up being assaulted by him as well. So Lele and Gabriela decided to give Emerson everything of value they had, hoping that maybe it would be enough and he would leave them alone. But unfortunately, that's not what happened. Emerson grabbed a kind of club with a nail at the end and started hitting the women violently. According to Lele, he had an incredible amount of strength at that moment. He attacked them with extreme violence. That's when both of them fell to the ground, completely unconscious. Emerson thought that both of them had died at that moment, and he covered the two bodies with leaves and dry branches and so on. After that, he simply left. However, Lele, followers, was still alive, as we already know. And after some time, she was still worried that Emerson might still be there. It was only when she realized he had really left that she started to move. She looked at her daughter, who was lying next to her, whispered her name a few times, and her daughter did not respond. She tried to pinch her, but nothing happened. Unfortunately, at that moment, Gabriela had already passed away. It was at that moment, followers, that Lelia had to make a choice. She could either stay there and die with her daughter, or leave her daughter's body in that place and try to survive in order to resolve the situation. That was what she chose. She found strength from who knows where, dragged herself to a nearby river, and let herself be carried away by the current, until she reached a place where there were more people and she could call for help. When she got out of the water and was already on solid ground, she crawled to a road where some drivers picked her up and took her to the hospital. She arrived at the hospital with broken ribs, completely battered. There she was treated and spent some time under medical care. And she gave her statement and was heading toward the crime scene, where Gabriela was found already lifeless at that location. The search for Emerson intensified and he was missing. But followers, it was only on March 20th, 2017, almost 50 days after the crime, that a warrant for his preventive arrest was issued. Emerson was being sought for attempted femicide and aggravated robbery, and the protests began. Gabriela's friends and family did not allow the case to be forgotten. They carefully plastered Emerson's photo on every available media outlet and on social media as well. Emerson was being actively sought. People marched together in the city of Quetzal. In Tenango, they held demonstrations, vigils, everything they could so that this crime would not go unpunished. The media speculated about some things, such as a possible romantic involvement between Emerson and Gabriella, for example, suggesting that because she rejected him, he acted violently. But this was completely ruled out. Afterwards, it was clarified that the meeting between Gabriella and Emerson that day happened as follows. Her mother's presence was strictly professional. She was looking for a property to rent, a property that was being offered by Emerson. That's all. A criminologist also presented as a possible justification Emerson's need for money and his use of illicit substances, claiming that the crime, although not premeditated, was committed with such volatile force that he assaulted Gabriella to death. 3 months after Gabriella's murder, and with her killer still missing, a memorial was held in her honor. And her boyfriend, Eric Lancero, showed up to the memorial dressed as a clown. For Eric, that wasn't just mourning followers, it was also a protest. He claimed that Gabriella had her dreams, she had an entire life ahead of her, she had so much more to do in this life, and her killer was walking around freely. And the call for justice in this case became widespread. Now it was no longer just the cries of friends and family. An entire nation was demanding justice, and the authorities had to give these people an answer. Journalists and radio hosts highlighted the important role Gabriella Barrios had as a radio broadcaster, locally. And they wanted a law to be created that would better protect media professionals. That's when, followers, the news came that made things even worse. Those who were asking, pleading for justice. Emerson Marim was no longer in Guatemala. He fled to another country, and he began to be sought worldwide, all over the world. With this news, followers Interpol issued a red alert, and Emerson's face started circulating all over the world. And it was only in September 2017 that the Guatemalan justice system said what everyone wanted to hear. Emerson Marim was captured. Was his capture successful? A month earlier, because he was in the United States, and that's where he was arrested. In an attempt to escape justice, he drastically changed his appearance, his face, so he wouldn't be recognized, but it was all for nothing. What contributed to his capture was the joint effort of the US police, the Guatemalan police, and Interpol. And in this joint effort, followers, he was found through his biometrics. That's when Emerson Marinho was identified and arrested. Emerson Marinho was deported back to Guatemala. Upon arriving in the country, when interviewed, he gave vague answers. When asked if he was guilty or innocent, he told journalists that everything would be clarified in due time. When he was asked if he actually had any property to rent at that time, he simply said he was a man of many businesses. And that's how it was. The whole time, followers, he was evasive in his answers and spoke as little as possible. After a 9-hour hearing, the judge ordered Emerson's preventive detention and he was imprisoned. The charges against him were femicide against Gabriella and attempted femicide against Lelia, Gabriella's mother. The charge that was dropped against him was attempted robbery because the items he took were dismissed as evidence. Next, and that only served as a smokescreen to cover up the violence of his crime or to justify what he was doing. It was only 5 years later, in 2022, that Emerson Marinho was put on trial. And due to the national outcry in the country, the trial was held behind closed doors. The defense tried to discredit what Lely had said in her testimony. They claimed, followers, that someone in Lely's condition, all battered, would not have been able to cross a river and crawl through the woods to seek help. She would have lost her life on that journey. But the judge considered that such an argument did not hold up. The weather conditions were completely different. Besides, Lily spent more than 30 minutes pretending to be dead at the scene, afraid she would meet the same fate as her daughter. And followers, there were also testimonies from doctors, from people who knew the situation, and from those who helped her. All of this provided support for what was being said, for what Lily was saying. So the defense's argument fell apart at that moment. And logically, the prosecution presented much more forceful arguments than the defense, such as the GPS data from the 3 cell phones, Emerson's, Laylee's, and Gabriella's. All 3 were at the same location at the time of the crime, the place where Gabriella's body was found. The recording of the conversation Gabriella had with Emerson the day before. This also appeared in the case files. And not to mention followers, the DNA evidence found near Gabriella's body, which indicated that the genetic material there belonged to Emerson. So there was no way out for them, followers. Emerson was indeed found guilty. And Emerson Mourinho's sentence was as follows: 50 years in prison for the crime against Gabriella, and another 16 years and 8 months for the attempted murder of Lely. This resulted in Emerson Marim receiving 66 years and 8 months in prison. Outside the courthouse, Lily's brother spoke out. He said that finally justice had been served and thanked God that his sister's killer would not go unpunished. An organization that supports victims of femicide in Guatemala said that the outcome of this trial was a victory not only for the victim's family, but also for all women who are vulnerable in any kind of abusive relationship. In this case, followers reminded me a bit of São Paulo, here in Brazil. Not because of the crime itself, but because of the accused's behavior. I immediately thought of Paulo Cupertino, who killed the actor Rafael Miguel and his parents and went on the run. And during his escape, just like Emerson Marim, he also used disguises, changed his name, and even created a fake ID, but it didn't work. It took some time, but he was arrested, stood trial for the crime, and was also convicted. And of course, Paulo Cupertino received a longer sentence, even more than Emerson Marim. He's going to get 98 years in prison, right? Theoretically, because here in Brazil we know that a murderer doesn't stay in prison for more than 30 years. So if he serves the full 30 years, Paulo Cupertino, since he was captured in 2022, he'll only get out of prison in 2052. And that's today's video, followers. I hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Always leave your comments politely, like, comment, and share. Click the bell to get notifications for new videos I post on the channel. Follow me on Instagram, the address is written here below. And see you in the next video.